Yeah, interestingly enough, I see that a lot. I see a lot of injuries on the left. It's just an observation. I don't really know why it is.
Are you gonna wrap that wrap?
Yeah, we don't really need plastic in this case because we've got so much comfrey that it's just gonna suck. I know he does. But there's another 15 minutes, so he's gonna have 15 minutes anyways at this point. But see how we use the plate to keep it from getting into trouble with house services? Yeah. Yeah. That plate is really useful. Okay. Would you like a little elevation on that?
Yeah, whatever's best.
Okay, well, let's slide his backpack around again. You know, I think it's good. I think it's good to elevate a little bit. Yeah, here we go. Yep. There you go. Nice.
Yeah.
The report from the patient is, it does feel good. One thing that might impress you is like the volume of material that we used. You really want to use as much as you can, as much as the injury will hold. The more you use, the better it is. You've got that depth of medicine there, so you want to use more of it. And then there was a question, this is cold, and then there was a question about whether it would have worked better to use hot therapy. And actually in this case, I've grown to the point where I use cold with mucilage. Like if I'm extracting say slippery elm or marshmallow, I use cold infusions because heat precipitates mucilage. So really you want to use cold water, and that's as good as it's going to get. I don't think that hot therapy is really going to be helpful. Hot and cold on that would be great. A great adjunct therapy would be to put an ice pack and then a heating pad. But if I only had hot and cold or a Comfrey Poultice, I would choose the Comfrey Poultice. I really would. I think that's going to do the trick. Another question.
If you had a patient you wanted to send home to deal with things on their own and you're not going to make one very well, did you send some of the already prepared?
Oh, the question is if you had a patient that you wanted to send home with the ingredients for a poultice, could you do that? Yeah, I think that would be fine. I've actually made up double size, you know, just out of convenience because there's kind of a mess involved and whatnot, and held like a quart of the Comfrey goo in the refrigerator for even a couple of days. It doesn't matter. It's not going to go bad, you know, overnight or anything like that.
So how long for him? How long will you?
Well, you know, he'll probably get some good effect from it within the next 15 minutes. The most good is going to occur right away, and within the first time period, like 20 minutes or what have you. But if you can wear it overnight, you know, even overnight, and then wash it off in the morning, you're better off.
So can you take some of that off right now, and then save it for tonight?
Well, that's what I was wondering. Can I just take it off and keep it for tonight?
And keep it for
So-
tonight?
So the question is, can he take something off the poultice and then use it again later? My tendency would be to say not to do that, because one of the things that's happening is, you know, you're pulling some of that stuck blood, you're pulling some of that toxicity, and you don't want to reuse that. It's like, you know, would you reuse your tissue after you blew your nose? Not really. So it's kind of similar. You can think of it that way. Then, yes, another question.
I was curious about, for wound healing, using centella for poultice. Like the difference between the Comfrey and centella.
Okay, so the question is, would you use Gotucola or centella as a poultice? And I think that there could be some good results from using Gotucola for a poultice. First of all, it's great for, you know, rejuvenating epithelial tissue, if you have like a broken nail, you know, or nail bed, or surface issues with the skin, then that could be very useful. But it doesn't have the allantoin. So the fact that it doesn't have the allantoin puts Comfrey in a space above. Yeah, it's one of the most common, and sometimes people, you know, really dislike Comfrey for various reasons, but it's actually number one. It's my number one healing herb. It's the one that I use the most often. I use a lot of strange stuff like ashitaba or whatever, but the fact is that when I go to heal in my family and whatnot, it's Comfrey, it's calendula, it's yarrow, it's plantain, self-heal. Self-heal I use consistently for treating oral lesions or any kind of atonicity of the mouth and the gums, any canker sores or lesions or cold sores. So yeah, these simple herbs that grow in almost every garden, as soon as you learn to recognize them, then you learn that they're everywhere around here in the temperate zone. Those are the ones that I use most consistently. So, another question.
Have you gotten questions about the pyrrolizidine alkaloids absorbing through the skin? There is concern
Question
about
is
that.
there a concern about the pyrrolizidine alkaloids, which are potentially liver toxic alkaloids that are in Comfrey? And we could talk about that real quickly. In terms of external application, I'm not worried about pyrrolizidine alkaloids. You don't absorb enough of them to then get into the bloodstream, then get into the metabolic process and approach the liver and kidneys to cause you any issue whatsoever. But if you're pregnant, then you don't want to do a big Comfrey Poultice right on the baby. Don't do that. If you are pregnant, you don't want to take Comfrey internally. If you are not pregnant and you have a traumatic injury, my feeling about it is, in my family, what I do is I use Comfrey freely as a tea or tincture. I like it a lot to be used internally. A neighbor got into a terrible car accident. He broke many bones in his body. He came home completely casted up, and he used 8 ounces of Comfrey tincture over the space of 2 weeks, and his doctor was amazed at how quickly he healed. So yeah, if you have internal bone related injuries, then take Comfrey internally, unless you're pregnant, because there are some cases where like massive amounts of Comfrey tea during pregnancy have caused veno-occlusive disease in the fetus. So you don't want to do that.
You're talking a lot about these acute scenarios. Have you seen any effect for someone who, say, has ankle pain for 2 months and no one knows what's going on? And
What a wonderful question. So we've been talking about acute injuries and traumatic injuries and first aid, really. And the question is, would it be possible to treat something like joint pain that's been going on for quite some time? I gave this talk years ago at Herb Farm in Williams, Oregon, and I didn't have anybody prepped for being the person that we would use the poultice on. And a lady came and she presented with a knee that was swollen and fluid filled and painful. And I didn't really know whether the Comfrey Poultice would do her much good at all or not. But we propped up her leg, and we had a mano and patate that was like an artifact that was on the outside at Ed Smith's house with the smiling Buddha and all the expensive things that he's collected. And we got the mano and the patate, and we smashed up our Comfrey root, and we put it on her knee, and she had her knee elevated. And it was only 20 minutes, and she said, that is so much better. She was really happy with it. And so, yeah, I think you can use it on chronic pain and swelling, and I think you'll have really good results. it's something that you can do. It's something that's garden derived. It's from the earth. It has like I mentioned before, it has basically 3 different modes of activity. And so at least one of those is going to be good for chronic pain. And I would recommend it any time. It's messy, it's time consuming, but it also means that you're spending some time on yourself and on your injury, and that may be just the trick that's needed. I also had a lady present with chronic pain in the knee, and she said, my doctor told me to keep ice on it, and it's been 6 weeks, and I've been keeping ice on it all the time. And I said, oh, sweetheart, we pulled up her pants, and I held her knee, and it was swollen, flabby, and completely cold. There was no circulation in that joint ever getting there at all. And so we used hot fomentation on that, and she had immediate relief, and her swelling went down. The next day her swelling was half. So yeah, too much of a good thing is wrong. Again, you want to take these, you want to be in the full sun, but you also want to experience the moonlight. You want to be like, on the beach, but you also want to dive into the water. You want to be awake, but you also have times when you must be asleep. And so these natural circular rhythms are everywhere. And if you can put those circular rhythms in your therapy, then you're really understanding. People will talk to me a lot about germinating seeds. And they say, I put it in the refrigerator for the prescribed period of time, and then I planted it and nothing happened. I'm like, well, yeah, it needs cold, but it needs that cycle of cold and warm, contraction and expansion. That's what's going to bring the life force on. Is this circular rhythm. Another question.
Plantar fasciitis, would that be something?
The question is plantar fasciitis. Would that be something that would be helped by Comfrey? And in this case, what I might do would be I might take and use like a Comfrey Poultice and St. John's wort oil mixed together and put that on there. And then I would also definitely use the hot and cold Epsom salts, because this would, and you could put the St. John's wort tincture in the hot Epsom salt water and then go cold and then hot again, because you're trying to heal deep nerve damage, or deadening in this case. You want to reawaken that, then you want to bring light to the plantar numbness, to the numbness at the bottom of the foot. So then you use the herb of the sun. You use the St. John's wort, and that goes right down in there. And I was presented with a case where a guy had not only fasciitis, but he had electric pulses coming from the bottom of his foot that would come up into his entire body and shock his whole body in a rhythmic manner. Every 20 seconds or so, he was getting this pulse. And so I'm like, perfect. We'll find out right away whether this works or not, because he's experiencing this signal. And so we used the hot Epsom salts I poured in like about an ounce of St. John's wort tincture. You need to use more if you're going to dilute it, and it's going to be transdermal. Just like with the Comfrey Poultice, we're using more because we're not taking it internally. If you took that much internally, you'd be sick. So we use that, and the electrical pulses immediately stopped. So St. John's wort would be a good choice. And I know that particular problem is one that occurs with the aged a lot of times, and that it's very difficult to treat. But you do what you can, and you use the best therapy that you can think of, and you may well have a positive influence on it. Another question from over here.
That you would do the Epsom salt and then do the Comfrey.
Yes, ma'am. The question is, would you do the Epsom salt first and then the Comfrey? I would, because I feel like doing the Epsom salts first would soften the tissues, would make it more receptive to the Comfrey Poultice. Question over here.
What about person who's issue like a ligament tear? Maybe even after a post-op repair, it don't complete that healing that it belongs. What would you recommend for that?
The question is, what would you do with something like a ligament tear? A Comfrey Poultice is a perfect answer for that. It's going to help It's going to help in reattachment. It's going to reduce swelling, which will make it more possible for the tissues to return to their normal place. I would definitely use that. Yeah. Question here.
Have you ever used onion poultice, fresh or filtered?
The question is, have we ever used onion poulticing? And the answer is check my book, Making Plant Medicine. There's a whole big, lovely story on onion poulticing and how it saves someone's life. But in short, the onion poultice is made by slicing a fresh onion, frying in a small amount of oil till the onions are about half done, then pouring in apple cider vinegar, and then stirring in a small amount of cornmeal, coarse cornmeal, until you get a gooey product that looks a lot like the Comfrey Poultice. And then this is put on a towel or a linen on a plate, and then the patient is repining on their back, and then you just slide that off, not too hot, not hot enough to burn, but as hot as you can. You slide it off right onto their chest, and you move it in up around their ears, and then you put the plastic and then insulate with towels, and these alliaceous fumes rise up, and it opens the entire upper respiratory tract, and it drains any stuck mucus, and it's very good for treating sore throat, laryngitis. When children are having trouble breathing and they have this labored, bubbly breath, then onion poultice. You use that at that point, and you can save somebody's life with it. It immediately brings on an ability to breathe. It drains out all the suppurating matter, and it will turn around an upper respiratory infection, especially in the acute phase. You can turn it around very quickly. Another question over here.
So it sounds to me like you were just saying that there's cloth in that situation. There's cloth between the poultice material and the skin, right?
There is, because you can do that, but you want to use like a thin napkin or a linen cloth that's thin, or cheesecloth even. Several layers of cheesecloth would be good, because I found that in poulticing on the chest, it's really hard to like scoop it and smear it. So you want to smear it on your cloth and then gently slide the cloth off onto the skin, and what happens is the onion just goes right through the cloth, and it sucks. Yes?
So what about scalier or oily spots like dermatitis, psoriasis, maybe even eczema at certain stages?
The question is about scaly spots, psoriasis, dermatitis. Often poultice can be helpful, and your plantain poultice is the poultice of choice for treating that. It's not the entire answer, because basically the problem is coming from within. So usually there is a need for working with, for instance, the kidneys. Excretion through the urine is a really good way to approach any kind of skin issues, and a combination of dandelion and burdock used either in the diet as fresh salad or even as cooked food, dandelion and burdock in soup, or even dandelion and burdock tincture together, are very good for any kind of skin issues. We're going to, it's a standard herbal treatment for staphylococcus as well. So it can go from the mild, psoriasis to runaway staph infection. Burdock and dandelion. Again, common herbs of the garden, common herbs of the field. These are the things that are at our fingertips consistently. They're the things that we live with. We know them, they know us. And so that makes our best medicine ever. Wow. This was good.
And I guess I'm a visual person. I like to see it. That's what you know, and the idea that we have all this, you know, research and stuff.
No, okay.
To know how to do things.